Hello everyone, it's me, Arden Lee. Last month I uploaded a video called How to Break Up with Someone Gracefully. That was requested as a topic by one of the members of the Repatterning Parlor, which is the group that I moderate. By the way, if you're not yet a member, you can find a link in the description box. Come join us and say hi. And in response to that video, another member of the parlor asked if I would create a video on how to break up with someone gracefully when you're the one being broken up with. I think this is an interesting question, and it allows us some space for inquiry, because normally we would think, well, if we're the one being broken up with, there's really nothing for us to do, right? If we're breaking up with someone, we may want to take certain precautions or certain considerations as to the way that we're framing things, especially if we're people who have been conditioned to be people pleasers in the past. We want to make sure that the way that we go about making that breakup is as smooth as possible, both to minimize harm to the other person and also to minimize the risk of backlash and harm to ourselves, right? There's a lot of ways that we might look into that. If we're being broken up with, there's really nothing for us to do, right? But the reason I like this question is because it explores that, especially this idea of the word gracefully. And this is an opportunity, I think, to dive in just a little bit to what we might mean when we talk about grace. Grace is one of those words that gets thrown around in a lot of religious modalities. Grace, God's grace. What does that mean, right? We hear it with forgiveness a lot. And what I've come to understand about grace is that it signifies a return to our center. Grace is the understanding that we are always whole, that we always have that opportunity, no matter how bad things get, to return to the light, to open our hearts, to be with ourselves, and to be with the truth of what is. Grace has a very close relationship to the truth of what is. Grace is the ability to perceive things as they are and to love them as they are without any need or attachment for them to be different in the present moment. That doesn't mean that we accept injustice, that we say that harm is okay. It just means that we are in touch with the truth of the present moment, and that we can stay in our heart centers and operate from that place. When I think of grace, I think of a light being shed. I think of illumination. Illumination is not always pleasant because the light reveals things, right? We think of light in spirituality as being this very happy, potentially even spiritually bypassy kind of concept. But light awakens what it touches. And truth isn't always easy. And when we're being broken up with, what that means is that we had a different idea in our minds of what this relationship was than the other person in the relationship with us did, especially if it comes out as a surprise, right? If all of a sudden one day we face a breakup that feels unexpected, too soon, or perhaps we maybe knew that it was coming but we still didn't want it to happen. We want more time. We want more chances. We want to work things out. And the other person does not. This is a harsh slap in the face from reality. It means that the person that we've been relating with, that we love, that we've committed to a certain timeline with, no longer wants to continue down that path with us. Not in the same way. And if our desire is for something different, it can be really difficult to embrace that reality. But if we're talking about grace, if we are talking about gracefulness, how to be broken up with gracefully. Grace is that understanding that no matter what the truth of the situation is, we love it for what it is and we return to ourselves. I don't want to minimize the hurt that we can feel when we are confronted with the disparity between the way that we felt about our relationship with someone and the way that the other person all of a sudden has begun to think of it. It's jarring. It means our whole worldview can be shaken sometimes. Grace is this idea that no matter how hard our worldview gets shaken, that we can always return to ourselves and see things for what they are. There's a Jonathan Brooke lyric that has stayed with me since I used to listen to her kind of jazz folk tunes back in my college days. And that lyric is, "No knowledge is too much to bear in the end." I would rather know the truth of my situation, no matter how difficult, than spend my days living in an illusion that things are the way that they are not. That's such a difficult thing to commit to. Even as I'm stating it, I'm like, am I sure that I want to speak that into reality? Like, how many rugs are going to get pulled out from under my feet after I say that on video, right? But it's true. And even at the place where I'm at now, I still have rugs pulled out from my feet every once in a while, and as my ability to perceive things truthfully gets stronger, those rugs end up being like smaller and smaller. And the adjustments are smaller and smaller. So sometimes it means, I just need to take a step back. I just need to dust things off. I need to just let the dust settle a little bit so I can see what's actually going on in the situation, and not just the things that I've been thinking and plotting and making up in my mind and, planning all these elaborate things. I need to actually take a step back and see what is actually unfolding for real. It's so hard to commit to cultivating the ability to perceive the truth, because we live under a lot of illusions. We're programmed with a lot of illusions. We're programmed with illusions that keep us in harmful narratives. We're programmed with certain illusions to continually keep us hopeful about things that are never going to come to pass while we slave away at our desk jobs, or we continue to function in the society where where we're all supporting the people who are living at the top. And some of these illusions are bread and circuses to keep us showing up to the Amazon warehouses and doing whatever else we need to do to survive. Right? Because if maybe one day things are just different. The ability to cultivate the commitment to cultivating one's ability to perceive the truth is a lonely and dangerous path. But it's really the only way to be free. And it's really the only way to start calling in the things that are actually meant for us. Because if we allow ourselves to continue living under illusions that things are one way when they are really the other way, then that doesn't help us gain any traction. Would you want to put off a breakup with someone who wasn't satisfied with your relationship for the next 2-3 years? Or would you want to know the reality of your situation so you can deal with it in the present? And you can say, maybe this is not actually aligned. Maybe this is not what's showing up for me. And I need to be real with myself. I think a lot about the time that we waste staying within a worldview that isn't accurate, but somehow serves some hope or dream that we have. And how funny it is that that inaccurate worldview, fueling that hope or dream, is actually the thing that's blocking us from achieving that hope or dream in reality. I'll give you an example. If you think, for example, that I'm going to make this completely unrelated to relationships, right? If you think, for example, that Social Security is always going to be there and the government is going to take care of you in your old age, right? That's something that, like, we're kind of uncovering now in the last several years is probably a delusion, right? That's probably not actually going to work. But people like myself were kind of brought up to believe that, like, hey, if you just go to college and you get good grades and you'll get a good job, you know, and then you'll get a retirement fund with that job and they'll take care of you. They'll give you a watch after, 25 years or whatever. And then you'll have your Social Security and your retirement fund and everything will be fine, right? And like people like me and my generation, like we still grew up when that was kind of common. And as soon as we hit the job market, we kind of started transferring into this gig economy, and now it's not the case anymore. So I could live under this illusion that the government is going to take care of me, that somehow I'm just going to have a retirement fund, that, everything is going to be fine if I just keep working and keep, doing my part or whatever. And in reality, about 5 years ago, I started having panic attacks, actually really realizing that the world was changing and that was absolutely not true. So how do I deal with the reality of that situation? I decide to take care of myself, right? I decide, well, I'm going to break that illusion, which is actually keeping me from achieving the thing that I want, which is security, in this case, in this example, financial security, and I'm going to create it for myself. Staying in an illusion of a relationship is saying, I want this relationship so bad that I think it's here, and I'm going to keep hoping and keep saying, like, this is fine, this is fine. When in reality, if we get rid of the illusion and we return to our center and we see the truth of the situation, which is what grace is all about, then we could go about creating that for ourselves from the reality of our present circumstances. Sometimes, when we talk about cord cutting in spiritual practices or releasing attachment, in personal growth paths, what we're talking about is, can we erase everything we think we know again, and can we see the reality from where we're at right now in the present? Can we make our decisions based on what is real and what we have now? Not what we thought was true in the past, not what we thought in the past might happen in the future, but can we drop in right now and take stock of everything that we have, all of our resources, all of our abilities, right where we are in the present moment? And can we operate from the truth of what it is to be right here? So when someone ends a relationship with you, it's an opportunity for grace. It's not going to be a fun one. It's going to be very jarring. It's going to upset your system. When your worldview is shattered, sometimes, our bodies deal with those things the same way that they would a physical threat. I'm not going to minimize or dismiss the hurt and discomfort that comes in that process. But it is an initiation into the truth, if you allow it to be. If you allow yourself to breathe and take stock of the situation and say, the reality is, this person hasn't been in the same relationship that I thought I was in. And it's time for me to take stock of my situation and say, how do I really create what I want? That doesn't mean that the whole relationship was a lie either. It may just mean that things shifted for one person in a way that the other person didn't necessarily either agree with or pick up on. But the more quickly we can assimilate the truth, the quicker we're going to bounce back. It's not a good idea to need closure from anyone outside yourself. Certain partners, certain relationships may give you apologies. You can kind of should all over people and say, you know, well, we've been together for so long, I need a conversation, that's probably true, right? That's a polite thing to do. But the only thing that you really need to move on is the understanding that they don't want to move on with you in the same way that you wanted to. And once you know that, you don't need to work out in your head all the other reasons that these other things you thought weren't true. You don't need to know what went wrong. You just need to know what the truth of the present reality is, which is that someone that you thought was going to continue to agree to be there for you in certain ways either did not agree to that or agreed to it in the past but is no longer in agreement with it in the present. And that's what's going to allow you to move forward. The more you need closure from another person, from anyone outside yourself, the longer you keep yourself tethered to an attachment that is at that point rooted in illusion. I do advise you, however, to get support from the people who are in your life and who do want to be there to support you. Friends, family, people around you whom you trust. It is super important to have a good support circle. So for sure, grab that support. But when we're talking about being broken up with gracefully, that word grace, the light, illuminating the truth of the situation, and our birthright to always return to our center, assimilate that truth, and begin creating from the reality of the present. That's what I really believe that grace is. Thank you guys. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time.